All right. Live, I think. Yeah, okay. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the 90's crime wave, because I guess I don't really know who listens to my videos, but maybe some young people will listen to it and try and explain kind of what happened during the 90's crime wave and then the subsequent, they didn't call it martial law at that time, but it was basically the same thing where, you know, they were doing a lot of stop and frisk, a lot of profiling, a lot of just picking up entire groups of people and putting them in paddy wagons and stuff like that. So, basically, you know, pretty much as far back as I can remember, crime was just bad in New Jersey. Even where I lived in the suburbs, the first time I got robbed was probably when I was in third or fourth grade. I think it was third grade because I was still in the school that only goes up to third grade. So I was in third grade, riding my bike home with my friend, and some guys pulled up next to us and tried to kick us off the bikes. But luckily we were good bike riders, And then probably a year after that, when I was in fourth grade, I was just walking home from school, and some basically fully adult guy, he was a high school student, just was okay, time to get buck naked. And I was in fourth grade. I didn't know, I didn't know what to do about that. But luckily, he was friends with one of my friend's older brothers or something like that, and he was just walking around the neighborhood. So then he was just man, he's like, don't do that. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? This is kind of stupid, but anyway, so basically what was happening was, if you ever seen the movie New Jersey Drive, at that time, I think Newark was the carjacking capital of the United States. So it was basically people were getting carjacked and their cars were getting stolen all the time. And it was to the point where we'd be at Boy Scouts and Boy Scout meeting at my friend's house, and you would hear somebody outside stealing a car. Just that's when it's bad, when the car alarm goes off and the people still just drive away in the car. And so basically what happened was, by probably around the mid 90's, people just got tired of their cars getting stolen and people just getting mugged. People were getting mugged at the supermarket, and my friend's mom almost got mugged. Apparently she punched the guy in the face or something like that. I don't know the full story, but there was a lot of stories of that happening in the area. And we lived in the suburbs, and people were just getting mugged and carjacked and all types of other stuff. It wasn't so much just random violent attacks. It was mostly just, mugging, robbing, carjacking. And so eventually what they did was they just started blocking off all the through streets to Newark. Basically where my friend lived, there was a kind of a side street. It was if you're going down his street, then there was another street in the middle of his street that went right into Newark. And so that's where they were stealing all the cars, because the cops can't chase them to the next town. So basically they just blocked off all the side streets leading out of Newark, and so that people can only basically come into the town through the main avenues. And then they just put cops right there, on the border, on the main avenues, just basically watching everybody that came in and out of the town. And similar stuff was happening in New York too, where people were, they were doing more of stop and frisk type of stuff. And the really kind of bad stuff was just, picking up people on their stoops and stuff, because maybe one guy out there had an illegal gun, but everybody else was just kind of hanging outside their house, and they just get caught up in it. So it's kind of like, I mean, people say it's like unconstitutional or whatever. I think possibly could be. But so, I mean, with all that crime happening, it, you know, it was like a similar thing where the government's kind of letting the crime happen, you know, because they want to lower the property values. And you can check Catherine Austin Fitt's work on that because she used to work for the Housing and Urban Development. She was like pretty high ranking, and she's pretty much come out and said like, look, you know, they're doing the drugs and the crime in those neighborhoods specifically to lower the property value so that they can then come in and buy up everything. And she's right, because that's exactly what happened in Newark. It's like it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and the projects were like, you know, just like projects everywhere. They were a bad place to live, really dangerous. Everybody there was like either scared to come out of their apartment or they were part of like some type of criminal organization. And so, I mean, it was even to the point where it was rumored. I mean, I kind of believe it, that, you know, how rumors were back in like the 90s. There was no way to really prove anything. But it seemed pretty plausible that the actual mayor of Newark at the time, Sharp James, was actually like a member of the Bloods. And, you know, similar things like with Marion Barry in like Washington, D.C., where he was like smoking crack with like hookers or whatever. You know, you kind of wonder, like, what are these people up to? And so, you know, basically, kind of like the state came in and took over. They didn't do it with National Guard troops, they did it with state troopers, basically, and kind of brought in more state troopers to like monitor what everybody was doing. And it got to the point where I think it was like the late 90s where they actually implemented a curfew in Newark where it was like you had to be inside at 10 o'clock, or they started making all the businesses close at 10 o'clock, which it's like Newark's a pretty big city. It's not like a huge city, but so to have everything closing at 10 was kind of like, you know, it was definitely like the first, I guess it was like the first part of it. And then starting around the 2000s, they started to basically build like around Newark. Like, you know, the corporations bought up all the properties like around Newark, and then they started to, you know, build their like corporate things. And that's around the time when Cory Booker got in office. So you can say he's like kind of like a corporate guy. Like he's not like a regular politician. Like he wasn't from Newark, which is like kind of like a unique thing, because usually like the politicians were from Newark or from the area. And he came in and he started like quote unquote revitalizing Newark's like downtown business district, which in a sense they did. They, you know, by like the 2000s, you know, you could walk around in downtown Newark and you didn't have to worry about getting like mugged and stuff like that. I mean, there were still some bad parts, bad streets, and that's probably when they started to form Bloodsville too, which is basically like an autonomous zone, but it's just run by the Bloods. The Crips aren't really strong on the East Coast. And so So basically, they built the like Prudential Arts Center in downtown Newark, which is like this huge like theater type of thing. And then, even though they were supposed to revitalize downtown Newark or whatever, what they really did was they just built a new like highway exit that went right to the Prudential Arts Building, so that all the people from everywhere else in New Jersey could come down there and go, but they could completely bypass downtown Newark. So they were claiming that they were gonna like help Newark, but in actuality, they just basically bought out Newark and then built their own stuff there and then built around it. So it's like, sure, everybody wants to like be like, oh yeah, we're gonna like do all this stuff or whatever, but I mean, it's like, you really think that they didn't like plan for like, they're like, oh, all these people are angry, we have no plan for all these angry people. Like, it's like part of it. It's like they know what you're gonna do next, and then they already have a plan set in place so that when you do the thing, then it gives them the ability to do the thing that they want to do. In this case, it's like when people do crime, then it gives the government the ability to say, hey, look, there's crime over here. Now we need more police. And then they bring in more police, and then the more police find more crime, of course, because that's what police do, is they find crime. And then they just, oh, well, we need more police. And then eventually they just send in police everywhere, and then you got martial law and stuff. And then people are blaming it on the government, but the government is really just responding to people committing crime. So that's basically what it looks like they're actually trying to do now. It's like they're trying, because it's like Trump is definitely like a corporate guy. He's in the government, but he's corporate. And so, that's like the corporate takeover type of stuff that's like their whole goal, is to like get everybody like riled up and then get everybody feeling helpless and defenseless and like they need help. So then they call for the police, or they call for the military in this case, or whatever. So it's like, it's like you're just playing into what they want when you do more like crime, or like encourage people to do crime and stuff like that. Because if you want a less authoritarian society where there's less people there to tell other people what to do, then people just have to basically either commit less crime or change the definition of what is a crime. Like, still, I'm libertarian. I just don't believe that some crimes exist that don't have a victim. There are some that may be still a crime, but for the most part, you know what I mean. It's like the police have, and the like lawmakers, they have a huge history of it. I mean, you look at the drug scheduling stuff, and pretty much every drug on there has some type of medicinal use. Like even heroin, they're like, oh, heroin, no medicinal use, even though people used it medicinally for like 100 years, or probably however long people have discovered opium for, right? But the reason why they don't want people to use heroin is because they want to put a patent on, whatever opioid drug they're selling at the moment, right? Like, that's the reality of it. It's the same thing with the conspiracy with like Anslinger and, marijuana. Because it's like basically the paper companies and the oil companies saw hemp as a threat to their business model, which it is. And so they made up a bunch of stuff about, people smoking. in order to scare people into thinking that it was now a crime, you know, to do something that's basically the same thing as drinking. And then they're able to crack down on it, and you know, they're introducing it into certain communities. Like there's a lot of research on how they were using it to target hippies and, you know, black revolutionaries and stuff. So they're like, they'll just find the thing that you do and then make that thing illegal, basically, is what I'm getting at. And then they'll just use that to justify the fact that they need to bring in more police and more military. So it's like, people act like it's so complicated, and it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do about the government having too much power and politicians? It's like, well, they wouldn't even need to be there if, you know, people just didn't commit crime, basically. Like, in the real sense, like if people just didn't basically attack people and steal stuff from people, then what excuse would the government have to send a bunch of police to your neighborhood? Right? They just wouldn't have an excuse. But that's what they'll do, though. They'll basically come up with any reason to, like, come into your place, and then they'll justify. They'll say, well, look, this guy needs help. This guy's asking for help. So now we got to send the police. And so that is really that's what happened. And it's like, even I heard the stories of like this, like late 60s, early 70s riots in Newark, and everybody rioted, and they're like, oh, it's going to be a revolution. But I mean, is it really going to be a revolution? I mean, that's why even like the J6 stuff, I'm like, come on, man. Come on. I mean, like, and these are people that know how the government works. These are people that are like in the military and stuff like that. They know how the government works. They know that like attacking the Capitol building is not going to stop the government. The United States government doesn't work that way, where there's just like it was specifically set up in a decentralized manner so that you couldn't just attack one person, because that was basically the problem with monarchy. So, oh, you can just attack this guy and then you can take down the whole system. So they were like, well, if we divide the powers up in between these branches of government and then divide them up more amongst the states and divide them further into the counties and give like responsibility to individual citizens, right? And that's what they do, right? Every time there's something bad happens, you never blame the system. It's never the system. It's always your individual responsibility, right? Even though there's like 300 million people in the United States, everything that goes wrong is always your individual responsibility, right? And that's how the system's set up, so there's no one to attack. It's just like the internet, basically, or like Bitcoin. Like, there's no one to attack. Like, what are you going to do? Get rid of Nancy Pelosi? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to mean the same thing, right? It's like the CIA goes in and overthrows countries all the time with like 3 guys. They can send like 3 guys into like most countries, but that's why it's harder to do it in the United States, because it's decentralized and we have like super high-tech monitoring systems, even though they don't obviously know how to use them. They're like, oh wow, people are on Discord? like they just heard about that like yesterday. Oh my God. Are you kidding me? They're like, there's people on Discord? Oh my, what? Oh, we gotta check that. Like, what did you think it was? Like, there's so many like messaging systems. Like, how could they, like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. But that's like basically just what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, sure. I mean, you could try to like overthrow the government, and then they'll just do something else. You know, they'll just be like, oh, look, now they're trying to look at what happened with the J6 stuff. All it did was just cause problems for everybody involved in it. Nothing happened. It's like, even if you went in there and you, like, did something to Trump, wouldn't do anything. Because they already have a vice president and then a speaker of the House, and they'll just whisk them away into bunkers underground. All those other countries don't have, like, a continuity of government system where they have, like, elevators going down to, like, bunkers under the White House, and then, like, train systems and all types of other stuff to, like, whisk them away to, like, secret airports where they can fly to, like, other countries. Like, it's not the same thing. Like, they kind of planned it out because they were the revolutionaries. So they were like, well, since we're the revolutionaries, we should probably try to make a system where it's not, like, susceptible to revolutions. Look at the hippies. They turned into yuppies. And then, like, you know, the Gen X people, the ones that have kids, they're pretty much just, like, regular, like, conservative Republicans. Or kind of, like, centrist-leaning Democrats. You know? It's like... And it's like, okay, we can do socialism, but it didn't work all the other times. And it's like, I'm not saying that capitalism is that much better, but obviously the government's just, like, printing money. That's not really capitalism. Capitalism just means, like, you're exchanging things with other people to try to get, like, a fair exchange. It doesn't, like, whatever the government's doing is, like, not really capitalism, because printing money, randomly printing money forever is not really, like, one of the mainstays of, like, any, like, capitalist economic, like, any serious capitalist economic system. It's like modern monetary theory basically is socialism, where they just print money endlessly and hand out the money to people. Like, that, it's already socialism. Like, but the government doesn't really want to help men. That's the thing. They just don't want to help men. So it's socialism for women. Because, like, think about it. Women, they can just either they get a job through DEI hiring practices, or they can get married, or they can get welfare, or they can become an OnlyFans model. You know, they can become a nun or whatever they want to do. But men, our only option is just to go to work. It's like, you just go to work. That's it. That's your only option. Like, so it's like, you can do socialism, but there always has to be somebody in the work camp, somebody in the gulags. Like, that's the problem with it. And it's like, the problem with capitalism is that it always ends up becoming, like, some type of crazy authoritarian system, because people start getting too much stuff, and then they get paranoid, and then they're like, oh, we need the government. You know? I mean, you can look at, like, Dave Smith. He's, like, a great example of the, like, libertarian to Republican pipeline, where it's like, when he was young, he was, like, super libertarian, and, you know, it was beneficial to his comedy career to have, like, all this, like, kind of, like, libertarian attitudes. And then as he got older and got a family, he's more conservative, more Republican. He's, like, more like, oh, well, we kind of need police here and there to protect my kids and protect this and protect that, right? It's like a natural progression of what happens. So, and that's, like, that progression is the progression of capitalism, where it's like, people are like, oh, okay, now I've got more stuff, now more people want my stuff, and now I've got to get more people to protect me and protect my stuff. And it's like, in either system, it ends up where there's a bunch of people at the top that are in control of all the stuff. Like that's really the problem, is that whenever you have like centralized control of all the stuff, whether it's a capitalist system or a communist system, it's going to create problems. And basically the only way to get rid of the government is for people to stop attacking each other. Because otherwise, the government will just use people attacking each other as an excuse to send more government. And then they'll just say, look, see, there's people that are being attacked, and so therefore they need help. We're going to send the government. And it's like, you can't really argue with it. I mean, unless you're going to say, oh no, let's let those people be attacked, right? And it's like, I've been talking about this stuff for so long that I don't talk about it anymore. You know, it's like when you talk to people and you're like, oh, the financial system's fake. They're like, oh, what? And they're like, no. And then you don't get invited back. And then you're like, what about fractional reserve banking and all this other stuff? And you don't get invited back. And you're like, what about the banks and the Illuminati? And people are like, you're insane. Don't talk about that. But it's like, I mean, it's pretty clear that that's what's going on. The government's just kind of like waiting for people to do stuff so that then they can propose like the solution to the problem, and the solution to the problem is always more government. More government taking more people's stuff and distributing it to other people, instead of you just keeping your own stuff and distributing it to whoever you want to, right? Because then it doesn't matter if it's capitalism or communism. It's like you just create your stuff however you create your stuff, and then you give it to who you want to or exchange it to who you want to. And then you don't have to worry about the government coming in and taking some of it, or a lot of it. I mean, depending on where you live, I mean, people are paying like 70% taxes in some places. I mean, it's like, come on. I mean, 70% taxes. It's like, what's even the point of that? It's just, all it is paying the same government that's like, and then in those places, that's where the most crime is. Like LA, pretty high crime. New York, pretty high crime. So it's just kind of like one of those things where, sure, like it sounds cool, like, but if you look at all the other generations that actually try to do it, it's like the only way to do it, it's like I would say that it's not really possible. I mean, if someone wants to explain to me how to like fight off like autonomous drone swarms and stuff like that, and F-16 fighters and Black Hawk helicopters and magnetic rail guns and all this other stuff, space-based laser weapons. I mean, really, come on. Like, please. I mean, even those like sound guns, I'm surprised they don't even use those as much during the riots, because they used to use them a lot in the 90s. They would have these like, they had these like sonar guns. I've seen them like up close in New York. They're like crowd control sonar guns where they can just shoot like a high pitched sound or whatever, and it just basically fries everyone's brain in the area. And they've got all types of other stuff too. And I'm not saying, oh well, but it's like, you should at least kind of look up that stuff and see what's possible. That's why, that's why it seems like MGTOW is just more of like a sensible thing where you're just like, whatever. Try to pay as little taxes as possible because obviously they're just using tax money to build more weapons and planes and send troops to other countries and stuff like that. Kind of stuff everyone keeps on complaining about. They're like, oh, you don't care about the wars? You don't care about people getting killed by police? Like, I was probably talking about this type of stuff before you were born. I got tired of it because nobody was listening. People are like, oh, the money system's fake. I got money. When maybe people shouldn't be getting shot for having, like, prescription drugs. Maybe they shouldn't. Yeah. Because honestly, I mean, that was the problem with the whole George Floyd thing, right? Wasn't the cop stepping on his neck. It wasn't him overdosing on drugs. It was the fact that you can go to jail for having a small amount of prescription medication that people can get easily anywhere, right? So he swallowed all the pills because he didn't want to go to jail. Nobody talks about that part, though, right? Nobody talks about the part where it's like, why was he so afraid for having just a couple prescription pills that you can basically get anywhere? They're not even technically, like, illegal because doctors prescribe them to people all the time, right? But you got to worry about going to jail, and jail is the worst place on earth, right? Which it basically is. Right, for some small amount of prescription drugs, right? That's the problem, right? That people got to worry about, and then, when real crimes happen, there's no police there. People getting shot, the police aren't there. People getting all types of stuff, and then the police are never there. Then, right? Because the fact is, they don't want to deal with gang members either. Like, I don't know. Like, I've been driving around in Bloodsville at like 2 a.m. I know what it's like out there. There's no cops. There's people walking around with like AK-47s. There's people on the rooftops at the spots, guarding the spots. It's like, okay. And then it's like everybody's either in the gang or, you gotta watch out. And you're driving around, and you hear like gunshots and stuff. And you're like ducking down in the car, like that's gonna save you. Yeah, duck down in the car when you hear gunshots, because gunshots don't go through cars. They actually do, though. So it's like, yeah, I mean, that's for some people if you wanna live like that. Can I get Men in Black? So yeah, I mean, that's basically all I had to say about that. Seeing it firsthand and seeing how, the crime gets out of hand, and then the government brings in the troops. And yeah, I mean, the libertarians are right. It's not gonna end. Like, they're gonna bring in the troops, and they're gonna do the martial law, but it can't end because, basically the jail itself is where all the like head criminals are at. So you can't. They're already in jail. So you can't really do anything to them. So it's like bringing in martial law like that isn't actually going to end crime. It's not. All it's going to do is just take away everybody else's freedom, and then eventually the crime will just come back. And then they'll be like, we got to bring the police back. Because basically that's how it works. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my perspective on it from having lived through it or whatever.